Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet AFL round 19 betting trends preview. Here we're going to look at the full round, all 9 games, break them down from a betting perspective. I'm going to share with you how I'm approaching betting on these games, the historical data, who's been winning their previous matchups, who's been covering, have they been going over or under the total. Go through some stats as well to give you a real nice overview of these games so you can make the best betting decisions this weekend that result in profit. But before we get into this week's games, I just want to quickly recap what happened last week. It was a fairly interesting round overall. Every game was decided by 1 to 39 points. So there was no 40 plus margins on the round. Brisbane started on Thursday night, going down to Melbourne and beating Carlton by 37. Gold Coast upset Collingwood on Friday night by 6 points. A game where they couldn't score in the first half, and then it was a real free-flowing fourth quarter. Adelaide overran the Western Bulldogs 109 to 98. GWS in another upset beat Geelong by 26 points. Then, in another upset, Richmond beat Essendon by 9 points. So we already had 4 upsets through the first 5 games. Fremantle beat the Hawks by 13 at home on Saturday night. Then on Sunday, we had Melbourne beat North Melbourne by 36. The Swans beat St Kilda by 5. And then after West Coast started really well, Port Adelaide came back to beat them by 26 points. Favourites won 5 of the 9 games, as I said. We had 4 upsets. Gold Coast, Adelaide, GWS, and Richmond all winning as underdogs. The underdogs also covered the spread in 6 of the 9 games. So only Brisbane Lions against Carlton, then Fremantle against Hawthorn, and Melbourne against North Melbourne. They were the only 3 favourites that won and also covered the negative handicap that they were dealt. This season, right now, as it stands, before we get into any of the round 19 games, favorites have covered the spread in 76 games and underdogs have covered the spread in 76 games. So it goes to show why you can't just always back favorites or always back underdogs. You need to do that deeper research to find the best times and situations to back teams. Home teams won and covered 6 of the 9 games. This season, away teams have a slightly better record. They're 77 to 75 against the spread. And then we had a slight edge to the unders over the weekend. 5 games went under, 4 went over the total. This season, 84 games have gone under and only 68 have gone over the total. We had that big period a few weeks ago where basically every game was going under, then it flipped, now it's evened out again. Right now, looking at the ladder as it currently stands, Collingwood are a game and a half clear ahead of the Brisbane Lions, even though they lost on the weekend, so the Lions closed that gap a little bit. Then Adelaide are in outright third with Geelong losing. And we've got 5 teams from 4th down to 8th. Geelong, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, GWS, and Fremantle all on 44 points with 11 wins. And then Western Bulldogs sitting that 1 win outside the top 8 with 40 points and 10 wins. All these sides, Geelong, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, GWS, Fremantle, and the Western Bulldogs, every single game they're playing from here on out through the rest of the season really is crucial. And I'm going to really look to use that, as I do every year, to our advantage when placing bets. If you want to follow all my final selections, player props, everything like that, and get more and more previews and stats on the AFL because you really want to be a winning bettor, check out the Best Bets membership in the link in the description. The first game this round on Thursday night, S versus GWS. And the Giants are big favorites here, $1.13, minus 35.5, and the total is 172.5. Obviously, no Nick Martin for Essendon in this game is a big loss for them, and this is really important for GWS. They don't drop this game. They've won 5 of the past 7 versus Essendon. However, it has been a history of being a close matchup, with 7 of the past 8 between these two teams being decided by 27 or less points. They only met once last season. They haven't played yet this year, and it was round 9 at Marvel Stadium, and Essendon won that game by 20 points, 82 to 62 as $2.68 underdogs. Looking at what happened in that game, Essendon had 22 scoring shots, GWS only the 17, so 5 differential there. GWS started well. They led at quarter time. They also led at halftime 42 to 30, but the second half was all Essendon. They kicked 8 goals to 3 to run out 20-point winners in the end. The stats from that game, Essendon slightly more of the ball. Both these teams are really high disposal sides this season. They're both in the top 4 for disposals. Essendon give up a lot more to the opposition than GWS though. Inside 50s plus 17 in favor of Essendon, so no wonder they won that game. You don't really need to be that efficient, and they were less efficient than GWS, but when you have that bigger differential. And even though the clearances were basically even, both at the center and the stoppages, so Essendon did a lot better at getting that ball into their forward 50, even though they didn't have a dominance at the stoppages. GWS slightly more turnovers, 113 to 74 marks and 15 to 10 inside 50s. This game, though, was now over a year ago, and I really can't see GWS dropping this game. They're heavy favorites. I think they'll win this game very comfortably. To be honest, I'd be surprised if they don't cover the spread. Essendon have lost 6 in a row. They've failed to cover their last 4, and with the look of their upcoming schedule, it looks like they're probably going to go on to lose 10 in a row. Following this game against GWS, they'll play the Western Bulldogs, Sydney, Geelong, and they have St Kilda and Carlton to end the season. The game last week against Richmond was really their opportunity to break that losing streak, but they still lost by 9 points. GWS, on the other hand, they've won 4 in a row. They've scored 106 or more in each of those 4 and covered the spread in all of them. And I think that it's going to be far too good, even though they're on the road here against the Bombers. So GWS to win comfortably, likely cover the spread. The total at 172.5 for this game. I make a fair total in the 160, so I think it is a little bit high. There is a chance GWS can run up a score. They did it back in 2023, but that was at their home venue, not on the road. The game's away from home at Marvel. They've only scored 62-75. We know GWS can score 110, 120 points. They've kicked 111 2 weeks in a row. If they get around that number, it'll probably go over the total. Essendon's defense has been falling away. They're now ranked 14th in the competition, but they also can't score, and that's why I can't see them going with GWS here. Essendon ranks 16th in points for at just 70 per game. So no super lean on the total. Would prefer playing Essendon's team total to go under and the Giants team total to go over and breaking it up that way than playing the full game number. Then we have Brisbane versus the Western Bulldogs. This is a really good game. At the Gabba, Friday night, lines are $1.58, minus 9.5, and the total is 174.5. Brisbane have won and covered 3 of the past 4 versus the Western Bulldogs, and they've also won 7 of the past 9 against the Bulldogs at the Gabba. Historically, the games at the Gabba have been close, with 6 of the past 7 being decided by 1 to 24 points. These sides met earlier this season in round 5 at Norwood Oval, and the Lions won that game 118 to 97. Brisbane had 28 scoring shots. Western Bulldogs had 27 for a 21-point margin. Brisbane were very accurate. Now, this game, you might remember, it was obviously a shootout. This is the round where they take those back in gather round, where they play majority of games at the Adelaide Oval, but then there's a few at the other venues around Adelaide and South Australia. But this one, Western Bulldogs got on top in the second quarter. They had built a 62 to 29 point lead at halftime, but after the Western Bulldogs kicked a couple of early goals in the third term, Brisbane went on this run where they kicked 9 straight goals through the end of the third quarter, then into the fourth quarter. The Bulldogs got a couple of back through Matthew Kennedy and Bailey Williams, and then the Lions kicked another 4 in a row to establish a winning margin towards the end of the game. So second quarter, all the Bulldogs, then third and fourth quarters, all Brisbane Lions to run out winners in the end. Brisbane, almost 400 disposals in this game, inside 50s, basically even. Stoppages, the center in favor of the Bulldogs, and at the stoppages, 31 to 19 clearances to the Brisbane Lions. Turnovers were even. Brisbane slightly more marks and marks inside 50. Only the 39 tackles by the Bulldogs. Now, how these sides are traveling coming into this game this week. Brisbane have won 3 in a row by at least 28 points, and they've covered the spread in all 3. The Western Bulldogs, they dropped the game to Adelaide last week at home, but have still scored at least 96 points in 12 of their last 13 games. And that's including the 97 that they got earlier in the season against Brisbane. For me, I just can't see the Western Bulldogs right now going up to Brisbane and winning this game. Brisbane obviously really want to make sure they cement their spot in the top 2 and get that home qualifying final and likely a home prelim final. Last year, they had to do it the tough way. They had a home elimination final, but from that point, had to go on the road for the following 3 weeks to end up winning the premiership. But Brisbane, this year, they have the opportunity not to do that. I think this game will be fairly close like we've seen previously up there, but expect Brisbane to run out winners by around the 10 to 15 point margin. Also, like the overs in this game, with the 174.5, 3 of the past 4 between these two teams have gone over the total. You can see the bookies have bumped it up a little bit from their past 2 meetings that were both 170.5, but it's exactly the same number as it was back in 2022 when they last met at the Gabba, which went over the 174.5, just with it going over by half a point. But I like the overs here. Western Bulldogs, they've had 5 straight games go over the total. As I said, they're consistently scoring 96 plus points almost every single game. The only exception was against Hawthorn. Brisbane scored 103 last week against Carlton, 120 at home the week before. And yeah, if either team get over the 100 mark, I expect this game to go over the 174.5. Brisbane at the Gabba, 3 of their last 4 games have gone over the total as well. Hawthorn versus Port Adelaide. The Hawks down in Tasmania are favourites. They're $1.30 minus 21.5, and the total is 156.5. These sides met back in round 5 this season at the Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide winning 121 to 91 as $2.85 underdogs. Port got the jump on Hawthorn that day. They kicked 6 goals to 1 in the first term, and then 6 goals to 2 in the second quarter to lead by 59 points at halftime. Hawthorn somewhat tried to get their way back into the game. They got the margin back down under 50 points here when James Sicily goaled, but then it held firm. Hawthorn went on another little run where they got 4 goals in a row in the fourth quarter, but then Port Adelaide got 3 back and were able to hold a 5-goal margin through to the finish. So Port Adelaide leading wire to wire there and doing all their best work in the first half. Stats-wise, Port Adelaide slightly more of the ball. They were plus 13 inside 50s, 109 inside 50s for the two teams combined. Port Adelaide well above their season average in this game. Hawks had 21 to 12 free kicks, even though they were on the road. Center clearances in favour of the Hawks. Stoppages 34 to 24 in favour of Port Adelaide. Turnovers were fairly even. Marks and marks inside 50 even for both sides. But this was a game that was just that first half by Port Adelaide, and in particular the first quarter where they really got on top. 31 to 21 scoring shots as well. This time around though, I see it playing out very different, particularly with this game being played down in Tasmania. Hawthorn have won all 3 games against Port Adelaide down there. So even though Port have won the past 4 in a row, all 4 of those games have been at the Adelaide Oval. You got to go back to round 2, 2022, where Hawthorn last beat them there. But with it being in Tasmania, this is a different story. Hawthorn have won all 3 games in Tasmania this season. They've also won their last 9 in a row there, going back over the past few years. And whilst Port Adelaide have turned a corner a little bit, they have won 4 of their last 6 games, albeit those wins being against West Coast, Carlton, Melbourne, and GWS. They have played 4 of their last 5 games at the Adelaide Oval, and this season when they've had to go and travel interstate, they've lost 5 of their 7 away games. This is definitely a tough trip for them, particularly when you look at the fact they have Adelaide next week in the second showdown match of the year. Potentially, like, this game doesn't really mean as much to them as it does to Hawthorn, who need to win. Hawthorn can't afford to drop any games against lower tier opponents through their run home to try and make sure they get a spot in the finals. If they drop any of these games where they're $1.30, $1.20 favorites, it means they're now going to need to start relying on other results to go their way as well, more so than they may be a little bit already. But I like Hawthorn to win. I think they'll win comfortably. No Connor Rosie for Port Adelaide as well. Hawthorn to get the job done. They are coming back from playing in Perth last week where they lost to Fremantle, but they have won 4 of their past 5 games, and yeah, can't see them losing this one. The total is low at 156.5. I'm going to make a fair total for this game at 165.5. The 4 of the past 6 between these sides have gone over the total, but it's definitely a different story being played down in Tasmania. Right now, I don't really have a strong lean on whether I think it's going to be high or low scoring. I think the key, obviously, is with the weather down in Tasmania, but Hawthorn, the better attacking side, and also clearly the better defensive side. They're only conceding 75 points a game, which puts them 3rd in the league. But Port Adelaide scored 121 on them earlier on this year, but in recent times, they've definitely cleaned that area up a little bit. So Hawthorn to win, no real lean on the total until closer to the game time. Sydney versus North Melbourne. The Swans are big favourites at home at the SCG. They're $1.10, 40.5 point favourites, and the total is 172.5. Sydney have won the past 9 in a row against North Melbourne, including the last 2 by 65 and 79 points. Earlier this season at Marvel, they won 117-52, and in the SCG game last season, round 18, the Swans won 138-59 as 50.5 point favourites. Interesting, back in round 4, it was only a 4.5 point handicap. We're now looking at one that's 10 times that, being in Sydney, but obviously off the back of North Melbourne's form, where they've lost 3 in a row by 36 or more points. And Sydney, they've won 4 of their past 5 games, though their last 4 have all been decided by 19 or less. So they've been involved in some really close games recently. Early this season, that game, the Swans had 27 scoring shots to North Melbourne just having 12. The Swans led for the entire game. It was fairly close through the first half, and it was really the third and fourth quarters where Sydney kicked right away with it, particularly this third quarter where they kicked 7 goals to 1 to increase their lead at halftime from 53-31 to 98-39 at 3/4 time. That was where the most of the damage was done in the 65-point margin. North Melbourne, almost 400 disposals. So they didn't have any issue getting plenty of the ball in this game. A really high handball rate at 179 with just 214 kicks. Swans though, 56-37 inside 50s, plus 19 clearances, both at the centre and at the stoppages in favour of Sydney. Contested possessions were both even. Both sides made low turnovers, 58-52, and we still saw a fairly high scoring game, with obviously the Swans scoring 117, North Melbourne not so much, 120, both really high marks as well. Definitely expect Sydney to win this game, particularly at home. Their odds suggest that. I wouldn't be laying the 40.5 points for them, that's for sure. They need their, what are very, very slim finals hopes alive. They're 3 games outside the top 8. If they obviously keep winning and a couple of teams above them continue losing games, then they could somehow magically work their way in, but it's extremely unlikely. But if they were to lose a game, then those chances are done and dusted. So the Swans to win, wouldn't lay the 40.5 though. Potentially the Swans at 1-39 is probably the best value play here. Probably wouldn't take North at the plus 40.5, would rather Sydney at the 1-39 as those 2 options, because I'm more confident in Sydney winning the game. Both these sides have had their last 3 games go over the total, and 5 of the past 6 between them have gone over the total. The total earlier this season at Marvel was 179.5, and it went under just due to the fact that North Melbourne only scored the 52 points. But this time around, it's 172.5, 6 points lower than it was last time they met at the SCG, which was round 18 last season. So basically a year ago, and obviously that game comfortably went over the total at 172.5. I like the overs here. I think we'll see a fairly high scoring game. North Melbourne's defense is really struggling. Sydney have shown that they do have points in them when they want to. They've scored 92, 94, and 96 across their past 3 games. They've also conceded 83 or more in each of their past 3. This is easier opposition than what they've been playing recently. And what I also like is their recent games that have gone over the total, it's been against St Kilda and Fremantle, the other one against the Western Bulldogs. So 2 teams that are big under teams, they've been able to get the game to go over. So yeah, like the overs in that matchup. Carlton versus Melbourne, and Melbourne are favourites. They're $1.65 minus 7.5, and the total is 166.5. Carlton have won the past 3 versus Melbourne. However, they've been really small margins. 1 point last season in round 9, 77-76. Then 2 points last season in the semi-finals, 73-71. And back in round 22, 2023, Carlton won by 4 points, 60-56. 6 of the past 8 head-to-head have been decided by 5 or less. This is one of the close matchups in recent times that we've seen. They haven't played this year, so it's been quite some time since they last met. That game where Carlton won by 1 point. They only had 17 scoring shots and Melbourne had 21, but the accuracy of Carlton got them over the line. Melbourne did try to come back and steal it. They kicked 4 goals to end the game, but Carlton were able to just hang on by 1 point after leading by near enough to 40 points for the majority of the second and third terms. They nearly let this game slip away from them, conceding 6 of the last 7 goals of the game. Statistically, disposals were even, but Melbourne, alongside the additional scoring shots, they dominated inside 50s, plus 20, 61 to 41. Stoppages favoured Carlton overall, but it was 14 to 10 at the centre, and then around the grounds, 30 to 28 in favour of Melbourne. Really high turnover rates for both sides, 84 and 82. Really poor numbers, and you wouldn't really beat many teams with turnovers in the 80s plus. This is a game where teams are really hard to trust. Carlton, they've lost 4 in a row with their last 3 losses, all by at least 37 points. They've also failed to cover the spread in 7 of their last 8 games. Melbourne, they broke a 5-game losing streak by beating North Melbourne last week, and they've also covered the spread their last 3. Those recent trends would push you towards Melbourne, but they are $1.65 favourites, and I don't really see any value in that. Do expect this to be a close game, though. Low scoring, close matchup. I think this is a perfect game for the try bet. Either team to win by up to 4 goals. Probably the way I'll approach playing it. I think that is the best option. Can't really see either of these teams winning by a big margin. That hasn't been the case historically, and I really don't see it being the case now. Melbourne, their majority of their recent games have all been close-ish losses by around the 3 to 4 goal range. And for Carlton, whilst they've been good in first halves this year, they've really let games get away. I think this is a really important game. This is definitely a winnable game for them if they turn up. Whether that is the case, we'll soon find out. But with big losses recently against Brisbane, Collingwood, and Port Adelaide, they get the chance to actually put a win on the board for their fans. Following this, they have Hawthorn, Fremantle, Gold Coast in the 3 weeks after. They've already lost 4 in a row. If they lose this, it probably becomes 8 in a row. And then there's more and more pressure and stuff on them. So I think they'll show up here, but like the try bet as the best option. Also, like the unders, don't know if I want to back it at 166.5. It is 9 points higher than the last time they met last season. Carlton, 2 of their last 3 games have gone over. Melbourne, 3 of their last 4 have gone over. Carlton on the season have been a really big undersize. It's just been their recent form that's been going over. And Melbourne, they've been going either way all season long. There hasn't been one strong way, but 7 straight head-to-head have all gone under. So I really like that trend. So close game. There's more on the line for Carlton, so I'd lean slightly their way at the 225. And expect it to be a low scoring. West Coast versus Richmond. The Eagles $1.68 minus 6.5, and the total is 160.5. We got the 2 teams on the bottom of the ladder going against each other. West Coast guaranteed basically the wooden spoon this season. So basically just playing for pride in front of their home fans. And this is basically their last real genuine winnable game to end the season. Following this, they'll play Fremantle, which definitely concerns me for this game, knowing that they have that matchup coming up following this. After that, they have Melbourne, Adelaide, Western Bulldogs, and Sydney. West Coast, this will be the only time they start favourites this season, assuming this current market holds up at around this $1.70 mark, which they're currently at. But Richmond have won 5 of the past 6 against them, and Richmond are coming off the win against Essendon last week. West Coast, they challenged Port Adelaide. They started the game really well, but couldn't put the whole 4 quarters together and win on the road there. But there was positive signs in that performance that would give supporters a bit of hope moving forward. But with that being said, I would lean towards Richmond as the underdog here. I really would never want to take $1.68 about a team that's only won the 1 game all season long and pretty much loses majority of their games by 5 goals. So as much as there is motivation here for West Coast to win in front of their home fans, Richmond have been like that team that struggles to win games but can put up a fight in games and keep them really close. So I think it's going to be a close game. Lean Richmond as the underdog. Also like the try bet here. I don't think either of these teams have enough attacking firepower to win by more than 4 goals either. Richmond won by 2 points. They scored 81 to 79. They had 26 scoring shots. West Coast had 24. Richmond started to kick the first 3 goals of the game, then West Coast kicked 4 in a row. From there, it basically held a very close margin, under 10 points all the way throughout the game. So it was only in the first quarter early on where Richmond actually led by more than the 10-point range. And so we saw a close contest right throughout. Richmond had slightly more of the ball, +4 inside 50s, and that aligns with them having 2 more scoring shots. Probably could have done a little bit more with the slightly more inside 50s. West Coast won the center clearances. Richmond won the stoppage clearances around the ground. Turnovers, both teams around the average to slightly below. Richmond just the 56 turnovers. So a pretty good performance by them in that area. Marks were even, and tackles, West Coast doing slightly more of the tackling, and a number fairly significantly above their overall average, but still unable to get the win. This game, as I said, like Richmond as the underdog, don't know whether I want to back them or not. Richmond 1-39 could be a play in this game as another potential option. Do like the unders here, even though the number's only 160.5. West Coast, they've had 5 straight games go under the total. Richmond, 11 of their last 13 have gone under. 3 of the past 4 between these sides have gone under the total as well. The only issue with all of that is 160.5 is super low, and it's 15 points lower than the total was earlier this season, which would have finished on 160 and would have gone under by half a point, but doesn't really leave you much room to work with. So I'm not sure how I want to play it. May look at alternative lines and see what we can put together from that perspective. Also for this game, important to mention, these teams both give up the top 3 disposals to the oppositions. Now, the concern obviously with that is they're the 2 lowest number of disposal teams, but they're playing against each other this time. You're not playing against a side that's going to control a lot of the ball. So that should give them opportunities. So you could look to target player props as well here. Geelong versus St Kilda, the Cats at home this week, $1.15. -33.5, and the total is 169.5. St Kilda actually have a really good record against the Cats. They've won 3 of the past 4 and covered 6 of the past 7. Geelong lost up in Sydney last week against GWS. They've now lost 2 of their last 3 games. And St Kilda, they've lost 5 in a row since the bye back in round 13. They've also conceded 92 or more points in 4 of those 5 games. This is a game Geelong really should be winning this game. I don't think it's going to be one that they'll drop at home. They did lose a few weeks ago against Brisbane at home, but this is certainly a different tier of opposition that they're facing here. I think they'll bounce back. They've lost 2 of their last 3. Don't really want to let that get any worse as we get closer to finals. So expect Geelong to win. I don't really want to lay the 33.5 points. As soon as you're pushing out over that 5 goals, generally with favorites and handicaps, I really like to work with under 20 handicaps at absolute most, barring any other situation. So I always look for different ways to play it. You could also look at the Cats team total here. With a total of only 169.5, we may see a number in the low, just over the hundreds. And I think that could be a potential play with St Kilda giving up quite a lot of points. Geelong scored 91 against them earlier this season in that loss, which I think it's really important that we have a look at what happened there. St Kilda, 23 scoring shots, 15 goals, 8. And Geelong, 26 scoring shots with 13 goals, 13. So accuracy there. Costly. St Kilda led the entire game. So Geelong were never in front at any stage at Marvel Stadium. St Kilda, plenty of the ball, almost 400 disposals. Geelong just over the 300 mark. 2 more inside 50, so not a huge differential, and ultimately just came down to accuracy. Clearances at the stoppage in particular favoring St Kilda 31-23. Saints made slightly more turnovers and 105 to 81 marks. A fair differential there. Both sides plenty of tackles. This time around though, later in the season, at home, more on the line, they'll get the win here. But that's part of the reason I don't want to lay the 33.5 and would prefer taking the team total, because I'd lean towards this game going over, assuming conditions are okay. We've got a 4-point lower number, but this is GMHBA Stadium compared to being at Marvel. But 5 of the past 7 head-to-head have gone over. St Kilda, 4 of the last 5 have gone over. I'm not afraid to play high-scoring shootout-style games, and that's what we've seen in recent times with these teams. So either the full game over or just the Cats team total would be the way I'd look to play it. Geelong, we know they have points in them when they're on. 85 last week against GWS, but 124 the week prior against Richmond. They've also scored 101 or more in 6 of their past 9 games. A couple of exceptions were Gold Coast, Brisbane, and against GWS, but not a game that I want to get too carried away with. You could also, I think I'll also be looking at props for this game. Geelong are ranked 14th in opposition disposals, and we know earlier this season in that matchup, St Kilda nearly had 400, so I'll be looking at some Saints players to put up some high disposal numbers as well. The following game, Collingwood versus Fremantle. The Collingwood side are $1.28 minus 22.5, and the total is 161.5. Collingwood have won 4 of the past 5 versus Fremantle. There's also a draw in there, 75 all in round 11 last season over in Perth. These sides haven't met in Melbourne since round 18, 2023, where Collingwood won 113 to 67. There were 45.5 point favourites for that game. About half of that this time around. They were given their 3rd loss of the season, losing by 6 points against Gold Coast last week, and they were kept to their equal 2nd lowest score of the season. This starts a 4-game run all at the MCG for Collingwood, and expect they're probably going to win 3 or 4 of these games. At $1.28, they are definitely very short in this matchup, which you don't see a lot of value. You expect them to bounce back from the loss. They have a good record against Fremantle. They've covered the past 5, but they've shown glimpses of being a little bit vulnerable in recent times. I spoke about how that game against Gold Coast was a bit of a danger game for them going up there prior to that big win over Carlton, but then were given a little scare against West Coast the week prior to that. Collingwood should be too good. Expect them to win. Just in terms of being value, I don't see there being a great deal. The matchup earlier this season over in Perth in round 9, Collingwood winning 97 to 83. They were very accurate. They only had the 22 scoring shots. Fremantle had 1 extra, but the Pies' accuracy was the difference between the two sides. Fremantle started that game. They kicked the first 3 goals. Collingwood went on a run at the end of the quarter to get back in front at quarter time, and that allowed them to then lead at the end of every quarter through the game. There was glimpses here early on where Fremantle got themselves back in front, but then they were unable to stop those runs by Collingwood. That was ultimately the difference. Only 300 disposals by Collingwood, so definitely be cautious. We'll do some more dives into that later in the week into terms of Collingwood's disposals, but definitely be cautious this week considering they had 300 disposals last time against Fremantle. They also had 34 inside 50s, so to win the game with 28 less inside 50s is very incredible. With these numbers, Fremantle should have won by 5+ goals realistically. So that concerns me a little bit in terms of like Fremantle's chances of winning this game, because this number is very unlikely to happen at the MCG. Fremantle won the centre clearances 20 to 8. I was even around the stoppages. Collingwood didn't really make that many turnovers, so Fremantle weren't generating those inside 50s a great deal off the turnovers either. It's mostly at the centre clearances, tackles. Collingwood making slightly more. But yeah, very interesting numbers. With this in mind, and Collingwood still winning this by 14 points, probably just affirms me slightly more they'll win this game. This will also just be Fremantle's 2nd game at the MCG this season. They last played there back in round 7 where they lost to Melbourne 107 to 97. The total is 161.5. I do the under here. I think it'll be low scoring. I don't know whether I want to play 161.5. It is a pretty low number, but it's what we've seen historically between these teams as well. Spoken about previously, the bookmakers definitely use these previous lines to set the new numbers and just make adjustments for recent times. But at 161.5, 6 of the past 9 head-to-head have gone under. Collingwood, 6 of their last 8 have gone under, and the exact same for Fremantle. 6 of their last 8 have gone under. So history between the two teams and their own individual trends over the past couple of months, pushing towards the unders for this game. Both teams top 4 defensively and neither in the top 4 in attack, so that backs that up as well. And then the final game of the round, Adelaide versus Gold Coast. This sets up to be one of the best games of the round. However, there is a major issue with this game, and I'm just hoping neither of these teams have an eye on next week, but I feel like they're both going to, which makes it tricky to bet into with confidence. But Adelaide right now are $1.42 favorites. They're minus 15.5, and the total is 175.5. I'd really be interested in Gold Coast here at that $2.93 mark if They hadn't just come off a win over Collingwood, and if they didn't have a home game against the Brisbane Lions next week, those two factors are the two worst letdown spot situations that you can have aligning for a team. Big win against a team at home who are on top of the ladder. Then the game following this you have against your main rival in the AFL. So don't know how up for this game Gold Coast is going to be in. Either way, it's still hard to go to Adelaide and beat them this season. And Adelaide have won all 6 meetings against Gold Coast at the Adelaide Oval, and they've also covered the past 3 against them overall. But Gold Coast, they've won 4 of the past 5. They've shown they can beat Adelaide. However, all those wins coming at either People First Stadium or TIO Stadium. So not the situation we have here. Adelaide won the game at Adelaide Oval in round 21, 2023, 89-61. The caveat to that and the fact that Gold Coast have a bad situation here is Adelaide, they have Port Adelaide next week. So they have their second showdown match. So it's not ideal for them either. Expect Adelaide probably win this game. I'm definitely not taking $1.42. The matchup early this season, it was a 1-point margin and it was filled with controversy. It was that game where Adelaide had the ball inside their forward 50 for the final 2 or 3 minutes of the game, and there were a lot of tackles and hits where most of the time you would see a free kick paid and there'd be a set shot on goal, but the umpire put the whistle away. Adelaide ended up losing by 1 point, so this will be in the back of their mind. I think they'll want to get that one back over Gold Coast, so expect them to win. It's probably going to be a fairly close game. Currently see Adelaide winning by more than 3 goals. Potentially Adelaide 1-39 or the try bet is the way to play it. Just definitely don't want to take that $1.42. That's my main thing I'm thinking right now. Gold Coast, 26 scoring shots. Adelaide only had 20. So they did well to keep it to just that 1 point and potentially could have tied it or won it. Gold Coast started, they led at quarter time. Adelaide got back in front in the second quarter to lead by 1 at halftime. Then the third quarter, 5-4 in favor of Gold Coast. And then the fourth term, 4-3 in favor of Adelaide. I just couldn't quite get over the top at the end. Adelaide, 370 disposals. Gold Coast, 60-53 inside 50s, 25-14 free kicks for a 1-point margin. Stoppage clearances, 34-23 in favor of the Crows, and Gold Coast only made 58 turnovers. So based on these stats and the overall result, expect Adelaide to turn it around this time, particularly with home field advantage and the awkward setup for Gold Coast. The total is 175.5. Surprising that we see the last 3 between these sides have all gone under the total, considering we've got 2 of the top 4 attacking sides in the competition. Though the total earlier this season was 183.5 and only went under by 2.5 points. This time around, a more reasonable number at the 175.5. Gold Coast, 3 of their last 4 have gone over. Adelaide, 2 of their last 3 have gone over. Concerning the game against Collingwood last week, like how neither team could score for a good half or almost 3/4 of that game, that worries me a little bit. No real strong play on the total right now. Currently, just a slight lean towards the over. I am certainly approaching this game with the setup. So that's my early look at round 19. Really appreciate you guys watching, following along, being part of the channel all season. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other videos through the rest of the year. Good luck with your bets on the weekend. If you want to see all my selections and use the bet finders to profit on the AFL, the link to those is in the description. Take care. Have a great weekend, guys.